On vacation. Please welcome Corey Brewer.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. I am the English evaluator. Oh, wow. I am the general evaluator this evening, and I am looking for everybody that hasn't been evaluated so far. And I'm going to start off with our chairperson, Todd, who held a fantastic meeting. So thank you very much, Todd. It was entertaining, it was exciting, it was a very different theme I've never heard before. We do get a lot of themes that get recycled, which is fine, but it was nice to have something new and fresh. I thought the meeting ran very well. It was slightly late, but I don't think that detracted from anything. We were doing a couple last-minute setups, and I thought that it just made more sense to start a couple minutes late than trying to push that 7:15 time. The room was set up when I walked in, and I came in pretty early. So Todd came here quite early. The room was perfectly set up. Almost 90% of things were done. So I thought that is really important as a chair because it allows you to do a lot of things last minute, like change roles, people don't show up, get all the other really important things set up that you don't have time to if you're scrambling around, stressed out, trying to get the room set up. So I thought that was really done well. The business meeting, I thought Todd had really good parliamentary control there. It was precise, efficient, and exactly what I'd like to see in a business meeting. Nobody was dragging on conversation or bringing up irrelevant things. There was no side conversations. He just went from one thing to another, and I thought it was well done. Todd also had really good bridging in between his introductions to people. Not only did he have introductions of the main roles, the table topics master and table topics evaluator, which you're supposed, but I also really enjoyed that he introduced our speakers as well. Both Katrina and Olivia, he had a thing to say about them. So it wasn't just, here's the evaluator and then bring them on up after. There's always that kind of awkward space in between when the evaluator says what the things they're looking for is, and then the speaker comes up. And I thought he filled that quite well, and it's not something I typically see of people. So I thought Todd did a great job on that. In terms of room for improvements for Todd, what did I write down? Right. I noticed that Todd obviously missed a couple things. There was a couple roles that he might not have picked up on immediately. Somebody had to shout out, but that was only because he's not using notes. So Todd came up here, he did one of the largest speaking roles in the club, and he did it without notes. So I thought that was a fantastic job, and I'd way rather see something being a little confused in the meeting than someone reading off a paper the entire time. So I thought it didn't take away from anything. Just another room for improvement or two would be Anne was the counter designated for the meeting, and then John walked in and then he switched it over to him. I thought just leave it with Anne, continue on.
I wasn't supposed to be doing it.
Right. Yeah, but he had designated to Anne, and it had already been set up. She had the sheet. I thought it would be just better if she just continued on with it. Just good practice anyway. Even though John was originally supposed to do it, he could have given him another role or something. Other than that, I thought Todd did a fantastic job as chair. Now, on to our joke master. Jill Fraser performed a great joke. I liked how she came up to the front. It was entertaining. It was funny. We all laughed. So well done on that, Jill. Room for improvement for Jill is, I didn't know what an MG was, so maybe I'm showing my age. But, okay, so I wasn't the only person in the room.
I'll text you later.
Explaining what kind of car that would have been interesting. And also, no notes would have just raised it up a little bit. I think the podium was off to the side, so that was a recurring theme. I don't know why everybody didn't, and nobody brought the podium back into the center, and then would always just read off it on the side. I thought it was a little distracting. Other than that, great joke, everything else. Our timer this evening was Anna Jefferson. Anna had a good introduction, but she did miss one of the important parts of the role is that she's going to be, at the end of the meeting, giving a report on her role. So other than that, she was obviously paying attention. She nailed a bunch of people, including myself, for being under over time. So performed the role well, was obviously paying attention. Didn't even give me that extra second or two that I probably could have used. But she didn't stand up. So we'd like to see everybody stand up, have a little bit more energy, address the club, and that's all I have to say on that. Other than that, well done. Our counter this evening was John, first Anne, but now John. John had a great introduction of his role. I really liked how John used really specific examples of what he was looking for. So he didn't just say, I'm just looking for ahs and ums. He said a whole bunch of other things he was looking for. So I thought John did really well in that. He was paying attention. At the end, he had a great report as well. So not much more I can touch on that. Well done. Our grammarian this evening, or grunt master, was Anant. Anant, again, one thing I'll say off the bat, it's been talked about for months, and I think he's the first person in a long time to even come up with one bad use of English language. So I will take one, so well done. English evaluator, we don't just want to hear what positive things we say. It's the same thing over and over again. It's really nice to hear a different way that we've had a faux pas in the English language, what we're saying wrong up here. So I thought that was a fantastic job. He had a good introduction, good conclusion, came up with both positives and negatives, so performed it perfectly. That leaves our table topics master this evening, which was Roberta Christopherson. Speaking of last names, I really liked how Ryan, I think, was using last names in all of his table topics evaluations. I'll get to that, but I just didn't want to forget it. But our table topics master this evening, Roberta, had a great set of questions. I really liked how she used the theme, but then she also had a couple questions that didn't pertain to the theme. Because as much as I love circus and talking about it, having a full 10 questions at times about the theme can be a bit much. So it was a nice break of having different ones. She had great she had good bridging, she had great questions. Other than that, a couple things I would have liked to see was she was leaning on the podium quite a lot, pretty much in between every speaker. So either move this podium aside, she didn't really need it, she wasn't reading much off her notes, so I thought just moving it aside completely and coming out in front of us would have made it a lot better. And that's all I have to say about Roberta. Two other things. I really liked how Roberta had an introduction at the beginning about the difference between carnivals and fairs and circuses, because I didn't even know the difference between them. So while that part of her introduction was really good, I think for the next time, what you're supposed to also include in that is why we're doing tabletops, what the tabletop master is. Ryan did touch on that after, and I'll get to that in a second, but we like to know what constitutes a good table topics speech and what your role is exactly. So, and that guests are both welcome to participate and exempt, and they're not required. So other than that, fantastic job. It was warm, welcoming, and fun, so perfect table topics role. Our table topics evaluator this evening was Ryan King, and Ryan had a fantastic evaluations. He came up here, and it's extremely difficult to do, way harder than general evaluator, is to come up here and give a evaluation on 6 to 10 different speakers and not have any notes. It's just way more difficult than general evaluator. And he did a fantastic job. He had both positives and negatives for every speaker. And I really liked how at the beginning, especially after Roberta had missed that section, he explained what he's looking for in his evaluations. He explained that he's looking for introductions and bodies and conclusions and eye contact and all the other things that really we're looking for. So I thought that was done quite well. One thing I would have liked to see would be just a little less convivial and a little bit more room for improvements for everybody. I think he talked about the speaker, said that did all these great things, a lot of positives, and then just gave one room for improvements. Personally, I'm here to learn, I want to improve, I want to hear as many things as I can to improve. So obviously some of our maybe less experienced speakers, you could give them 1 or 2, but I want to hear every bad thing that you can think of that I did. Otherwise, I'll never improve. I'll never stop tiger pacing and muttering and losing my eye contact. Can't say anything else. It was a fantastic job, so well done, Ryan. And that leaves our 2 speech evaluators. Our first was, one of them was Dwayne Turcotte, and Dwayne had a fantastic evaluation of Olivia. He was another member that was weirdly off to the side, hiding behind the podium, and I think that if you just moved the podium to the front and read off his notes, which is fine, especially off of an evaluation, I thought it would have just made a little bit, would have been way better placement. I think that the beginning of his evaluation really was his strong point. He came out, he was using the floor, where Dwayne excels is when he's out here talking with us. But then when he went back behind the podium, I thought he struggled a little bit with having that same energy and flow that he always has up here. So I think Dwayne could have came up here and just talked with us and gave an amazing evaluation of Katrina, and it would have made it just that higher level. Other than that, it was a fantastic evaluator. He was a fantastic evaluator. He had lots of positives and negatives, and obviously he's paying quite attention. Our second evaluator was Michael O'Connor. And another really strong evaluator, very difficult to find negative things about him. He had a lot of really good positives and negatives about Olivia's speech. He was energetic up here, used the floor well, and I mean, there's not much you can say negative. One just suggestion, something that I've learned to do, when I prepare my speeches or evaluations, I try and, despite knowing a lot of big words and things like that, I try not to use them because I always stutter and I mess them up, even though I know what the word is and how to say it. And another thing that I do, he didn't do that, but another thing that he did was he told us that he was going to have 4 points, and then he forgot his 4th point and said he was going to skip it. I think that if you come up here, say, I'm going to talk about a couple points, it's a lot less set in stone than saying, I have 4 points to come up and say here. Even though you may or may not remember, I think if you just said, I've got a few points I'm going to share that I really liked about Olivia's speech, then he wouldn't have dug himself in that hole and said, I don't know what I was going to say. It didn't detract from his evaluation at all, but I think that if he had just either ignored it, because by that time I had forgotten that he had said he had 4 points. He was just so into his evaluation and was doing such a good job. I think that if he just skipped it or not done it, it would have just made it a little bit better. And am I missing anybody? No. The only other thing I'll say is we should all turn our phones off at the beginning of the meeting. This is very rude and disrespectful, and I really hope better out of all of you next time. So, Mr. Chair.
It's just really impressive to see Corey